Okay, everybody, this is Dr. Harmon, and as I promised, I'm going to do a part two. Last night, which was Tuesday night, the 10th, we did part one this week, and we covered lunches database number one. And I again want to encourage you, please read that text passage, pages 23 through 30 of the Patrick text, and next week, bring your textbook with you to class. In fact, as you view this video, you ought to be taking a look at it. Now, remember, we have all of these access workshops that we've done and we've done them ahead of time, and so they're due. So you should be uploading them. Then you have an exam from the POTSI text, chapters 2 and chapters 3. Now, I'm going to go here for a minute, and we'll scroll on down. And notice that next week, Lunches Database 1 and Database 2 are due, as well as Lunches Database 3. I'm going to go through Lunches Database number 2. We covered number 1 last night, and you should have uploaded your work. And now in this part 2, I'm going to cover Lunches Database 2, okay? And then next Tuesday night, we'll cover number 3. In the meantime, okay, just so that you don't get panicky, and I'm moving on down to next week, I have a Lunches Database 1 already there that you can load. I have a Lunches Database 2. You can use this, okay, as a backup if you run into a problem, all right? Then you can upload this for number 3. Now, I've got these here as backups for you. Don't abuse this, because you're not going to get anything out of the class, if you're not following along in the textbook. And speak of that, I'm going to need to pause this recording for a second and go get the textbook myself. So I'll be right back. Okay, I got the textbook. It'd be a good idea for me to heed my own orders, wouldn't it? Anyway, we're going to be working out of the SQL Fundamentals text by John J. Patrick, the 3rd edition. And I showed you what it looked like last night, but we'll do that again. And go through the annotation here for a sec. I'll get the eraser. Okay, there we go. Now, I'm going to pop over here to Amazon. And I look through books. And SQL Fundamentals. Third edition by John Patrick. Here's the textbook that we're using. I've got that in the syllabus. And you can get the paperback is there. You can buy some used ones as well, but you need to have the textbook with you. You should have already have it, and you should be following. Now, you can get it in Kindle if you do that. If you use Kindle, that would be fine. And again, I have backup assignments here for you. So this is the textbook, and I have backups for you in case something for you should go wrong. So I've got the Lunches Database 2. This is a series of these I've worked through, but we're going to go through it again today and just go through the process. So that I'm going to pop over now to chapter 2 of the Lunches Database. All right. And that's going to be over in starts at page 31 in your textbook on getting information from a table. Now, it's always a good idea, okay, if you take a look at page 32, you're going to see an outline of the chapter. And we're going to talk about the select statement and the where clause, and then the order by clause. So we're going to, as I said, we're going to build these progressively a little bit. They'll become a little bit more complex. Now, page 33 shows you basically the process that goes on when we have a beginning table, and you'll see that at the bottom, page 33, and then the result table where you've pulled data from columns A, C, and E. A column is also known as a dimension in a database. It's a variable. It's something like last name, first name, street address, city, state. Each of those would be columns. Okay, and a unique set of them creates a record. Okay, now as we go through, you're going to see here, and I'm over on page 34 and 35, we're going to start with the overview of the select statement. Now, the reason I want you to have your textbook is that on page 34, pardon me, at the top of page 35, you're going to see the task. Okay? You'll see a thing called the task, and then you'll see the Oracle and Access SQL, and that's for dealing with that problem. Now, as I mentioned, each time you want to go over to the Patrick materials, so we're going to go into the files. Okay. And I'll just type in Patrick. And there's the Patrick materials, the zip file. And I'm going to download that. Of course, you know, I've downloaded it several times. That's why I'm getting the designation. This is number 3, Keith. How many of these are you going to download? And I'm just going to start back again with the Patrick materials number 1. Okay. And I'm on my desktop now. As you can see, there's my friend Cardinal Buddy. And you can see Patrick materials number 3. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I don't need it. But there's my SQL fund, my data warehouse. And you remember last night I worked on and renamed one Harmon and had it there for you to upload. And I've got it in my case files over here. Now, I'm going to just assume you're working on something where you don't have where you start fresh each time, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to get rid of this SQL fund 2007. Okay, and I'm going to start with a fresh database. So I'm going to open this up. Here's the access code for specific chapters. So I'm going to need that out on my desktop. And then I'm going to get SQL fund. So there it is. And let's see if I can find there's the access code. So I've got my fresh database or fresh data warehouse with all these tables, and I'm going to run some queries using Chapter 2. And Chapter 2 focuses upon getting data from a table and primarily using the select statement, okay, and the where clause, W-H-E-R-E, and the order by. And you should have your text, because here's the deal. In the textbook, I'm on page 35. You're going to see the code, and they'll tell you this is code that works for either Oracle or Access. Then you're going to see the beginning table that's going to be we're working with, and then you'll see the result table. Okay, so I've got SQL fund, and I'm going to open it up. All right, and now I'm in a place I'm ready here to go ahead and do some work, but I need to get my, okay? Now I'm going to need to open up the access code for Chapter 2. And here it is. It's going to be a text file. All right. I'm going to just move it out to my desktop. So I should have a file out there. There it is for chapter 2. So I'm going to open it up. And here we have, and we're going to work on problem 2.2. And 2.2 is that one that's right there on page 35. And let's talk about this for just a moment. Here's the syntax. We're going to select something. We're going to select this field, the employee ID, the last name, and the credit limit from the employees table. And we're going to add two conditions where the credit limit is greater than 20, and then we're going to have it ordered by last name. So I'm going to copy this code, okay, and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to click Create, Query Design, close that off, and I'm going to go to the SQL view, okay, and I'm going to run the code. Okay, and this should, I'm going to save this as task 2-2. Okay, and this is from page 35. Now, let's think about this for a minute. We use the employee table. Now, when you're using your text, you're going to notice that when he shows us the code, for example, this Oracle and Access SQL, it's in the middle of page 35. You're going to notice that he'll have some notes. Those are little footnotes where he explains what's happening. And if you turn the page over to 36, you'll see his notes. Okay? And that explains what's going on. Now, here's our results set. And basically, we got it by employee ID. We followed alphabetical order on their last name, and we got anybody who had a credit limit over $20. Now, we can go to the design view, and you'll see the fields that we called up, and then that criteria. This should remind you, I think, it should remind you of when we were in business, if you took business 1123, where we ran some queries and we used the design feature. Now I'm going to close this off, okay, and yes, so we've got that, and so we've got our task 2. But I'm going to do this time, and I'm going to use query design. And I'm going to do this from the design view as opposed to pasting in and cutting the code. Now I'm looking at the code that says, all right, I'm going to work with the employees table. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on employees. Okay. I've got the employees table, and I need to get the employee ID. I can double click this, or I can click the down menu. And then the last name, again, I can double click this, or I can click here and get the last name. And I want to get the credit limit. And again, I can come down here, double click credit limit, or use the drop down menu and get the credit limit. Now, by default, every database will sort things in ascending order. In other words, from lesser to greater, smaller to larger, A to Z. So I don't really need to do that, but since I've specified it, then I'm going to click on the sort, which is this third row, right under last name. I'm going to choose ascending. okay? Then on the credit limit, I'm going to come to this line that says criteria, and I want anybody who has greater than $20. So I'm just going to simply input greater than, okay? And I'm ready, and I'm going to run this, and there it is. Now, if I go down to the SQL view, there you'll see it. So when we run things in the design view, it saves the code. When we input the code directly into the SQL area, okay, it saves the code. That's what I was talking about last night. And if you read over on page 36, you're going to see how they're talking about virtual tables, result table, as he speaks about up there at page 37. That basically what gets saved is the query language, nothing else. If you have the authority to alter a table and you're performing an exercise to alter a table, then that's fine. That's great. If you don't, then what gets saved is the results set that you pulled from the table. Okay? That's what he's elaborating on. So we've done 2-2. And I'm not going to keep that. I just wanted to show you how we could use the design view. So we'll go down here to the queries, and you'll see task 2-2. And you might even want to do something like this. I'm going to rename this task 2-2. Page 35. Now you don't have to do this, but it's okay. It just makes it a little easier to take care of. Okay? All righty. So we're going to move on over here. And now page 37, he talks about an overview of the select clause. Okay? And he tells you, you're going to select a list of columns. And you can even use what we call a column alias, and we'll talk about that. And then in the middle of page 37, he's talking about select the name of the table. And if you use the select distinct clause, it eliminates duplicate rows from the result. Now, there in the middle of page 238 he uses the select asterisk from employees. We did that last night, so there's no need. So we're going to work on the bottom of page 39. All right? And that's 2-4. So I'm going to open up my code here. We've done 2-2. 2-3, we did that last night. You know that asterisk means get everything. So we selected everything for the employees table. We did that last night. Now we have, okay, a little bit different critter. And if you'll notice at the bottom of page 39, he has some little footnotes there about what's going on there. What am I doing? Now, in the middle of page 39, he talks about a column alias, and I'll show you. In this case, we have a column. We're going to create a column called excellent worker as evaluation, and 10 as a rating. So when you see as, we're using a column alias. Now in the middle, at the bottom of page 39, they give us the task. What we're going to do, we're going to get the employees table, we're going to get the employee ID, we're going to get the phone number and the last name. And we're going to change the employee ID to employee number. We use that as to create a column alias. We're going to change the phone number to the name of the column to extension using the column alias. And then we're going to also put in two columns. We're going to create two of them. One called excellent worker and the other 10 as rating. And we're going to get that from the employees table. So I'm going to copy the code. Now I want to say this also. If you watch this screen, you should. You go through the screencast. If you compare what I do here with what I have uploaded there as kind of a default or fail-safe if something happens for you for Lunch's Database 2, I'm going to do some things differently. So don't let that throw you. Okay, so we can Control-C. I've copied that code. I'm going to click Create. And let's see what this jewel is. All right, we go back up here. I'll close this off. Now I'll click Create. Oh, it's not letting me. Okay, what are we doing here? I'll open it back up and see if it's going to play nice. All right, and I'm going to click Create. There we go. Query Design. And I'm going to close this off and I'm going to put in the code. And I'm going to run it. This is, and there we are. Now the column that was known as employee ID, we've changed it to employee name, employee number. And then for the extension, for the phone number, we change it to extension. That's that as extension. Then we have the last name. And then we added these two columns, evaluation worker, excellent worker. The column is named evaluation, and we put in excellent worker, and that excellent worker is in a pair of single quotes. This is what we call a hard code. We've entered this in so that it shows up, okay? And then we have the rating as a new column, and we put 10 as the rating. So this is going to be 2-4, task 2-4. And I'm going to call it task 2.24, page 39. Okay? Now let's look into the design view, and you'll see here we are. And here you'll see the expression. The employee phone number. And then if we go down to the SQL view, we're going to see where we used that code, where we did what we created a column alias. We renamed employee ID to be employee number, phone number to be extension. Then we added in these two columns using the column alias. So we had a column called evaluation and one called rating. Okay? So not that big of a deal, but so you've seen the results set. So there are three things you can look at. You can look at the results set, you can look at the design view, or you can go and look at the SQL. You can generate the query using the SQL or the design view, it matters not. In some of these simpler queries, it's easier for you to just simply use the design view, but you want to make sure of what you're doing. Okay, so I've got the access code for 2. We've done 2.2. We've done 2.4. Now we're going to, and then look, 2.5 is another one where we select everything from the employees table. We've done that. And then he has a variation. And this is the one we're going to work on. And we'll talk about this for just a second. Okay, I'm going to close this off. And I'm going to click Create. And I'm going to go to Query Design. And I'm going to put in the select. And I'm going to run the query. Now, let's take a look at the code. And this is at the bottom of, this is 2.5. And by the way, let me stop for a minute. At page 40, you can see the beginning table for the employee table, and then for 2.4, you see the result table. That's the results for that 2.4 that we ran. Okay, that's all I was to say. Have your book with you so you can see the code he wants you to execute. You can see the beginning table, and you can see the ending table. Okay. Now, he talks about using the select statement to get a list of all of the fields in a table. Okay, you could do that by clicking on the thing just as easily as running the code. Now we're in the middle of page 43, and and this is Oracle and Access Variation 1, adding a where clause. Okay. So I'm going to click Control, and we posted that code. Now let's look at it and see what we're asking. Now, the employee table is over there on page 42, and then we see the result of variation 1, and that's 2-5 variation 1. Okay. We selected everything from the employees table. However, we added a condition, and here's the condition, where the manager ID is null. In other words, we don't have anything entered here. This gives me an opportunity to talk about what we call the problem of nulls. When we have a data table and we have records, for example, that employee table on page 42, the beginning table, you'll notice that under the manager ID, you have two rows that have a null value. In fact, if you look at the one for employee 206, you're going to see the hire date's missing. It's null. There's no credit limit. That's null. The phone number is null, and the manager ID is null. When we have a null value, it's a nightmare because we're not quite sure why we didn't enter data. Did somebody forget to do it when they filled out a form and we let it through, maybe online? Or maybe people were using a pencil and paper and writing down information, which they inputted in, and they just simply didn't provide the data. Who knows? Now, when we run code like this, we're trying to find missing data. In this case, we found some missing data. And here's the missing data. Take this again. We don't have the data for hire date. We don't have credit limit, and we don't have a phone number, and we don't have a manager. When we get something like this, we call it an anomalous record. It's an incomplete record, and we don't know why. And I'll just tell you my famous story, working with a client who had a form for new members where they had 43 different spaces to fill out information. And they wondered why they continued to get reports with all kinds of missing data. When I traced it back to the form that was filled out, there was no data entered. The people who had visited that Sunday, okay, provided the data they thought was necessary, and that's it. They didn't want to provide any more. So I said, you can either keep this form and learn to live with all these gaps in your report, or change the form, have fewer items. And I had a voice in the room say, well, what items should we keep? And I said, those that identify the person. Does that make sense? And helps us contact them. Who are they, and where are they from, and how do I reach them? Okay. And so the form got shortened, and magically they started to get reports that they could use. And they didn't have to worry that they had a bunch of incomplete reports, or that they were overwhelming a visitor who said, my goodness gracious, do they also want a blood sample or what? Okay? All right. I try to give you some experience I've had with this stuff and a little bit of business wisdom. And in this case, we're looking internally with this report. We're saying, hey, is there data missing? And then that becomes a question. When you get the report, the next question has to become, why is the data missing? So we're going to save this. And this is going to be 2-5 variation 1. And you could even put page 43. Okay? And we'll close that off. Now, at the bottom of page 43, the very bottom, the author gives us variation number 2. And in this case, he has us select everything from the employees table and then order them by last name. Okay? So we're going to add an order by clause. So we'll click create, and we're going to do this using the query design instead of the code. And we're going to work with the employees table. I'm looking at the bottom page 43, and I see the code, and I know I'm using the employees table. Okay? And they want everything. So I'm going to select employee ID, employee first name, last name, department code, hire date, credit limit. You say, why didn't you just press the employee with the asterisk and just get everything? Because I have I want to order them by last name. Now, theoretically, I'd be okay just pressing it, because by default, everything is put into ascending order. I want to order it by the last name, okay? And I'm not told if I want to do it in in how we want to do the sort. Okay, do we want it to be descending or ascending? Okay, and so I'm just going to leave it because by default I know it'll be ascending order, and I'll just run the query. And there it is, and their names are in alphabetical order. And so this will be, I'm going to save this query, and this will be task 2-5 variation 2 and page 43. Okay? The authors will give us plenty of these types of variations, and they're over on page 44, the authors show us the result set. And the authors give us a cute trick that says, displaying the data in any table, you can just put select from table name, and you can replace that with the table, the name of your table. Okay, great. Let's move on over to page 45. And now we're going to use the select distinct clause. The select distinct clause allows us to eliminate duplicate rows. And as we'll find down the road, when we use a union of two tables, we get everything. If we use union all, we eliminate duplicates. But when we do a union of two tables, okay, we'll get everything. So when we don't want to have duplicate rows or records, we use the term select distinct. And I'm right in the middle of page 45, and there's the task. Get a list of all of the different values in the manager ID column of the employee table. Okay? And I don't want any duplication there. And there in the middle is the Oracle and Access code. Here it is, select distinct, manager ID. So what this is saying is select each manager ID, don't duplicate it, okay? And we're going to get this from the employees table. I will copy this, and I'll click create. I'm going to go to the query design and go to the SQL, and I'm going to run the query. And here's what we get. We get 201, 202, and 203. And notice we have a null value at the bottom. You say, oh, this doesn't look right because I have a null value at the top. Let's just go back into the design view for a minute if we want to be sticklers. And I want to sort that. I'm going to sort that in ascending order. And let's see if it gives us what I want. Yeah, no, it doesn't. So I'm going to go back to descending order. Let's see if it does that for us. Okay, yeah. The null is not as apparent there, so we probably want to go back and keep it in ascending order. So it's very clear we have a null value. Now, my hunch would be that the record that has a null value is a manager. They don't have a manager ID because they're the manager. So this is one of these situations, see, where I've talked about, again, the problem of a null value. Now here we've used the term we selected the distinct ID, we selected the distinct manager ID, and we found, okay, that we have a null value And that's because that person is the manager. So there's the result table at the bottom of page 45. Okay. So I'm going to save this task 2-6, page 45. Okay. Now, well, we use the distinct, yeah. We did if you look at pages 46 and 47, okay, you get variations on this, and he shows you the one where you order the manager ID in descending order. I did that. Okay. He shows you a variation there at the bottom of page 46 where you add the ID in 201, 208, 210. And this is, you're choosing certain employees. That's what they mean by where employee ID in. And you're selecting those 201, 208, 210. You're finding their manager ID. And those people are managers. Then you see the variation over on page 47. So he has you do some variations of this. And then at the bottom of 47 says, what if you eliminate the word distinct? Well, you get all the manager IDs repeated because you have different employees who report to the same manager, but you have a couple of managers there because, well, they don't have a manager ID. They are managers. You got me? Now, there on page 48, they give us at the bottom of page 48, they give us this task, and this is 2.7. They want us to get a list of all the different values, the manager ID and credit limit in the employees table. So we're going to use the select distinct clause. We're going to use that language, that syntax, that code that's up at the top of page 49. It ought to be in here. And there it is. So we're going to select the distinct manager ID. And we're going to hit the credit limit. And we're going to get that from the employees table. And if you look there, you'll see the beginning table. This is in page 49. The middle has the beginning table. The top shows the code that we're going to paste into the SQL area. Then we see the beginning table. Then we see the results set. And so what we're trying to find out is people who have different managers, what do their credit limits look like? And this might be because we've had some complaints that some managers are, maybe the managers have discretion. Maybe they have a range, a minimum of $15, maybe and then maybe a maximum of 30. And so employees, maybe they've been complaining and said, look, so-and-so has a credit limit of $30, but I only have 15. Okay, so I'm going to click Control. Got that, Jewel. And I'm going to click Create. And I'm going to do the query design. Now I've just inputted the code that's at the top of page 2.7. Notice he says this is Oracle and Access because it will work in either one. And we're going to run the table. And here's what we get. And we can use this little grappling hook to size this thing out so we know what we're looking at for sure. And here we have the manager ID and a credit limit. Then we have then we have a manager ID and a credit limit. And then we have a null manager ID and a credit limit. So these first two records right here are what are at the bottom of that result table on page 49. And then we see the credit limit and the manager ID for each of those employees, 201 and 202, and then employee 203. The authors give us some good advice there in terms of talking about what it means to eliminate duplicate rows. And you'll want to take a look at that. Okay? Now, we're going to save this, and this is going to be, I think it's task 7. Yeah, task 2.7. And that's going to be page 49. Okay? Now, starting over on page 50, the authors give us an overview of the where clause, W-H-E-R-E. And on page 51, again, this is why you need to have your book with you. You can see all of the ways that we can use the where clause. The condition is the first column, the meaning, and then an example. So there's plenty of there. The where clause, it's a Boolean operator. It's saying, here's the condition, okay? And then the meaning, where it equals, and then examples. And they see, and we'll take the equal clause where it equals. And they say, for example, with numbers, the credit limit equals 25. With first name equals Sue. Oracle hire dates. And they show you the difference in the dating mechanisms for Oracle versus Access. Oracle uses single quote. Access uses pound signs. And we talked about that last night. And then, then they give us, take us over here to page 52. And they have us do using an equal condition in the where clause. Now, if you look at the bottom of page 52, now let's pop up 2.9. As we go through this, it should become easier and easier for you just to look at the code and say, okay, I know what we're doing here. I know this is a select clause, okay? All right, I know it's a select clause. I know the columns or the fields that I'm getting data from. And I know the table from which I'm extracting data. Okay? So I can just look at this and I know. And this is going to become, as you've noticed, as I said, we keep building these queries. They become a little more complex each time. But it's procedural. Pardon me, it's not procedure. It's data definition driven, and it's straightforward. Here's what I want, how I want it, and where I want you to go get it. Now, the one problem with this code here, and I'll erase this on a little handy eraser. Okay. Now you see the final little culprit where the manager ID equals, so we've used where it equals 203. And so you say, so Dr. Harmon, you're telling me that this query says we're going to get the employee ID, the first name, the last name, the manager ID, and the hire date from the employees table? Yeah. And then we're going to extract data from those columns or those fields, and the only data we want is where their manager ID is 203. And that's what we'll get. And if you see the middle of page 59, you see the result set. Okay? So I don't see any big deal in really having you run task 2.9. If you want to, that's fine, if it helps you feel better. But let's do this. Instead of running the code, I'm going to click create, and I'm going to use the query design view. Now I know I'm working, I can look at the code and I can tell I'm working with the employee table. And I want their first name. Oh, wait a minute. I want their employee ID, so I'll get that. And then I want their first name. And then I want their last name. And I want the manager ID. And I want their hire date. That's going to be a little bit, and I want the hire date. I'll double click that in. And the criteria is going to be equal 203. And we'll run this. And there we are. Now, this gives me an occasion to talk for a moment about developing tables. And we're going to get into that. We did some of that in Business 1123 if you had it with me. But when we build a table, we have to be careful about, when we do each field, about the type of data that we want it to be. For example, on this manager ID, okay, if we designate it as text, then we'd have to treat it like text and we'd have to put quotes around it. If we treat it as a number, it's pretty simple. We just use the equal sign. So let's go back to the design. Let's say this first of all, and this is going to be task 2.9. Page 52. Okay. And so if somebody says, well, what do they teach you up there at that Baptist college? You could say, your friends, you say, well, I learned about working in SQL and developing a query that uses an equal condition in the where clause. And that will shut them up. You're going to encounter people out there who are going to think because you came to OBU, you went to some little rinky-dink Baptist school out in the middle of nowhere and you don't know anything. And the truth is, by the time we're finished with you, you're going to be some of the best business graduates in the entire world. Totally. I know this. So, work on this. Listen. Put it forth your best effort, and you'll leave here and you'll be a top-notch employee. Okay? So here we are, and we've got that result set, and they show you the result set in the middle of page 53. And if you want to just clarify this, well, we're good there. Now, over at the top of page 54, they show you another variation of the using the equal clause, where clause in the equal condition, And here in this case, you're choosing somebody, everybody who has the first name, whose first name is Henry. You see at the top, page 54. And then you could see people who were hired on July 1st, 2008. That's the bottom of page 54. Okay. And then at the bottom of page 55, here's another variation of task 2.9, where you get the first name equals Paula. Anybody named Paula? Remember, if you look back on page 51, you're going to see all of those different ways that we can use the equal condition. Over on page 56, if you look at the bottom of page 56, you're going to see another variation on using the where clause with a conditional. Notice at the very bottom of page 56, it says list all the employees who have a credit line less than $17.50. Show the columns. Okay. Well, you can look at the code and right off you can see it. And in case for those of you that are miscreants and you don't have your book with you, I'll have mercy on you. Here's 210. And notice what we're going to do. Okay. I'm going to use the select clause, and I'm going to get the employee ID, the first name, last name, and the manager ID, and the hire date from the employees table. And then, and there's the employees table. And I want where the credit limit's less than 250. So I'm way a ways from where I need to be. Excuse me for just a minute. Let me erase all this junk I've put up here. My apologies. I'm playing with 209. We want to go down to 210. Okay. There we go. Now I got that critter. All right, here we are. We're going to use the select statement. We're going to get, these are the fields that we're going to get, and we're going to get it from the employees table. Why am I continuing to go back to 209? That's just weird. Okay. This is 210 that I want. This is 210 example 1. Here's the employee ID, the first name and the last name, their credit limit. We're going to get that from the employees table. And this time we say where the credit limit is less than $17.50. You say, Dr. Harmon, could it be equal $17.50? Yep. Could it be greater than $7.50? Yep. Could it be equal to or greater than $17.50? Yep. Could it be equal to or greater than $17.50? Yep. 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 So this is 210. Let's just go ahead, since I've done all this yelping, and this will be, or copy this, and we'll click create. Query design, I'm going to close this, I'll go to SQL, I'm going to run it, and there's our result set. And you'll see the result set for this in the middle of page 57. And so I'm going to call this, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to call it task 2-10, page 57. Okay. Now, they give us some more examples on page, am I a prophet or what? At the top of page 58, they show you where the credit, where not the credit, they use the where not clause. Let's go ahead and look at that one because that one's a little bit different. Here in this example, we're saying this is example 210. Okay? 210 example 2. We're going to use the where not clause. So we're saying if the credit limit is equal to or greater than 1750, we want anything but that. So let's copy this in. Okay, we'll get our handy SQL and we'll click create. Query design, we'll close that off. We'll go down to the SQL view. Authors will take us through every kind of variation. It becomes mind-numbing, doesn't it? But you'll thank me. So let's think about what we're looking at. Okay? We got everybody whose credit limit is not equal to or greater than 1750. So it's 1750, we don't want them. If it's 1749, okay. But we didn't have to be 1749, but we did have a couple of yahoos who had a credit limit of $15. So used the where not clause. And of course, that's going to be our query 210 example 2. So we're going to put, I'm going to save this as task 2-10 example 2, I guess, page 58. So far, so good. Okay. We come down to task 211. That's articulated for us there on page 58 and then on page 59. And by now, you should be able to look at this code and have a pretty good idea of what you're going to be after. So let's see. Here we have 211. This is on page 59. And we're using a not equal condition in the where clause. Let's look at what this code says. It says I'm going to select, I'm using a select code. Okay. And I'm going to get these fields where not manager equals 203. So we're going to get everybody except the people who report to the manager number 203. And you see the beginning table there on page 59. Then you see the result table. And our result table matches up. And I'll get my handy eraser out here and get some of this stuff I've left out here. Okay. The remainder of chapter 2 walks you through using some things like the end condition. Okay. For example, over at page 61, they want you to find everybody who reports to who report to employees 202 or 203. So they're at the bottom, page 61. Okay, this is 212, and we're not going to run the query. I mean, you can run it if you want to take the time and do it. That's fine. And I know it'll be a thrill. Okay, about this IN means search for, and any employee who reports to a manager 202, 203, get them. And the results over on page 62, the beginning table and result table. The authors just walk you through the rest of these uses of the where clause in pages 63, 64, 65. And then over on page 66, they show the like condition in the where clause. Okay? And they show you some examples there of using the like clause. That pretty much runs it through. They have the order by clause, sorting the rows in ascending order, sorting rows by several columns, so using sorts. Before I shut this down, which I'm going to, okay, and because the textbook will show you the beginning table, the results set, the code, I don't feel it's necessary to go through every single one of these. You can, of course, open the text file up and see all of them, okay? But I think we've seen enough. But here's the thing that's important. If you take a look at page 79, you're going to see the whole process. Step 1, we'll use the from clause to choose the beginning table. Step 2, we use the where clause, okay, to choose which rows of data I want from the table I asked for in step 1. In step 3, the select clause chooses the columns, and then in step 4, I order everything in a particular order. And he has some key points there at the end of the chapter, column 3. Well, my friends, I'm going to close all of these, and they're there, and I am going to save this as the database, and on my desktop, it'll be SQL Fund 207, and I'm going to put Harmon Keith LD2. And I'm going to save it. And there it is. And I got my file on there, and I saved it, and then I just simply upload it. Okay. And you'll upload it where it says upload here. For Lunch's database too. SLBSD0 modules, and they are. So when we meet next week, we'll work on Lunch's database number 3. Okay? Thank you much, and I look forward to seeing you next week.